My boyfriend vanished after stealing from the Mafia. The Don showed up and told me I belonged to him. My name is Hailey Kramer, and this is the story of how I was sold, claimed, and somehow loved. Let's begin. I thought love was the answer. Turns out, love was the question. And the answer?
Run.
The first time I noticed something was off, Kevin hadn't texted me back in 12 hours. He did that sometimes, vanished into his startup hustle, blaming investor calls or dead zones. But this time, the silence felt surgical, like a cut made on purpose. Then the landlord knocked, and everything split. "Miss Kramer," he said, not even trying to hide the unease. "Someone's looking for your boyfriend. A man. Italian, I think. I didn't give him your name, but he already had it." My stomach flipped. Kevin had been jumpy for weeks, missing calls, cashing checks, and hiding the receipts. When I asked, he told me not to worry, that he was handling something for work. What he didn't say, that he'd taken $250,000 from a man with a private army and a death stare carved from granite. I didn't find that out until 6 hours later, when a black Maserati pulled up outside my apartment building, engine idling like a threat. 2 men stepped out. One stayed by the car. The other knocked once and walked in without waiting.
Didn't speak.
Just closed the door behind him, his coat catching on the air like wings made of fire and ash. Tall, impossibly striking. Not handsome in a boyish way, handsome in the way you don't survive. Black coat, black shirt, eyes like obsidian. Expressionless, except for the disdain carved into every line of his jaw. I didn't even ask who he was. I just said the first thing that felt true. "I don't know where Kevin is." He stared. Not like a man, like a weapon. And then he spoke.
Good.
"Because if you did," he didn't finish. His voice was low and accented. Not flowery.
Not romantic. Brutal. Italian.
"You're Hailey Kramer."
He didn't ask.
I nodded, barely breathing. "And you are?" "Dino Aurellio." That name carried a gravity, like it had its own weight in the room. I didn't know who he was in that moment, but later I'd find out. Don Aurellio, the cruelest mafia heir in Rome, now operating in the States, known for turning debtors into dust, for collecting what he was owed by any means necessary, for not blinking when blood was involved. Kevin had stolen from him and vanished, leaving me behind like a pawn on a burning chessboard. "I didn't know what he was into," I said quickly. "I swear. If he owed you something, I had no idea." $250,000, Dino cut in. "Transferred in small batches. Washed through your joint account, which makes you legally an accessory." "No, he used my name, but I didn't." "Legally," he said again, eyes narrowing, "I could shoot you where you stand." My breath left me. "But I won't," he added, tone flat. "Because dead girls can't repay debts." I stared at him, mind racing, pulse breaking apart inside my skin. "Kevin took your money," I whispered, "and skipped town." Dino's mouth curled, but not into a smile. "He used you, left you here as payment," which is either insulting or intelligent, depending on how you look at it. "I don't have that kind of money," I said softly. "I know." His coat shifted as he moved toward the window, fingers brushing the frame like he owned the building. He stared out like he was thinking about burning the street down. And then, calm as thunder, he turned back to me. "I'm not going to kill you." That didn't sound like mercy. "I'm going to collect you." I shook my head. "What does that mean?" "1 year," he said. "You're mine. For 12 months. You'll live where I say. Obey when I speak. And in return, your debt is cleared. Permanently." I blinked. Like prison. Like possession. I should have said no. Should have told him to take me to court. Or the cops. Should have called a lawyer, a friend, anyone. But I didn't. Because something about the way he looked at me made all my logic collapse. Not like he wanted me. Not like he cared. Like he'd already made the decision. And I was just catching up. "Do I have a choice?" I whispered. "You do," he said, eyes gleaming. "You can say no, but then I'll start taking pieces." I swallowed. He didn't blink. 1 year, I echoed. He nodded. Starting now. I have a job, friends, a life. Not anymore. And with that, he turned to leave. But at the door, he paused. Pack lightly, he said. You won't need much. I packed like a prisoner. 2 pairs of jeans. A sweater that still smelled like safety. Toothbrush. Phone charger. A book I'd never finish. It felt stupid to bring anything, like choosing shoes for your own execution. But I didn't cry. Not when I zipped the bag. Not when I locked my apartment door behind me. Not even when I saw the car waiting at the curb again. Same black Maserati. Engine still purring like it was hungry. The same man from before was driving.
Silent.
Sharp-jawed. His eyes didn't meet mine when he opened the back door. I slid in like I was already his. Dino didn't speak during the drive. He sat beside me, one arm stretched along the back of the seat, fingers dangerously close to my shoulder but never touching. Like he was making a point that he could reach me, ruin me, destroy me, and was choosing not to.
For now.
Where are we going? I asked finally, needing something to fill the silence. His eyes didn't move from the road ahead. Home. I didn't ask if he meant mine or his. I already knew. His estate sat at the edge of the cliffs, where city lights gave way to black ocean. Stone walls. Iron gates. Security so tight it made prisons look polite. The car rolled through the front gate like it belonged there. Like I belonged there. Dino stepped out first. He didn't offer his hand. Didn't wait. He walked up the marble steps and inside, leaving me to follow like some terrified little shadow. And I did. Because what else was I going to do?
Run?
Into what?
The sea?
Inside, the house was cold. Elegant, but untouched. No family photos. No warmth. Everything sleek and sharp. All clean lines and dark wood. Like him. A man who only let things in if he could control them. We stopped in a hall lined with doors. He opened one. Guest room. Spacious.
Blank.
This is yours. That surprised me. Not a cell. He turned, expression unreadable. You think this is freedom? I didn't answer. I'm giving you a door, not a choice, he said flatly. Don't mistake one for the other. He didn't look at me when he added, shower.
Eat. Rest.
We start tomorrow. Start what? His voice went cold. Being mine. I didn't sleep. I lay on the too-soft bed and stared at the ceiling, thoughts unraveling like thread from a bleeding seam. What did being his mean? Sex? Power games? Silence? I didn't know which answer scared me more. Morning came like an accusation.
Bright.
Icy. Loud with the sound of footsteps that didn't belong to me. A knock came at the door.
Sharp.
Controlled. I opened it to find a woman standing there. Early 40s. Stern face. Black dress. Holding folded clothes. I'm Lorna, she said. Mr. Aurellio's housekeeper. These are for you. I took the stack. Silk. Lace. Nothing I'd choose. He expects you downstairs in 15. Downstairs where? You'll know. And just like that, she walked away. The dress barely zipped. It wasn't tight, it was precise. Like it had been made for me, by someone who knew exactly where I'd bend or break. I found my way downstairs, heart in my throat, every step echoing like a warning. Dino was waiting in what looked like a dining room, long table, windows stretching toward the cliffs. He stood at the head, not seated, waiting. His eyes swept over me once. Not lustfully, assessing. I sat without being told. My hands stayed in my lap, clenched. You'll have rules, he said. I didn't respond. First, he went on, you don't leave the estate unless I take you. Ever. I nodded.
Second.
No lies. I'd rather silence than fiction. Another nod. Third, he said, voice dropping, you will not touch another man. You will not look at another man. That surprised me. Jealousy? Control? I didn't ask. Do you understand? He asked instead. I stared at him. Why me? His brow twitched. Because you're what he left behind. That's not an answer. He stepped closer, slowly, like a storm cloud unfolding itself. No, Hailey, it's a sentence. I shivered, and yet some part of me held still, because somewhere under the threats and cruelty, something else was moving in him. A flicker.
A weight.
Maybe it wasn't humanity. Maybe it was just interest. But even that felt like a razor pressed to my throat. Why didn't you just kill me? I whispered. His gaze didn't waver. Because death is permanent. And this isn't. He tilted his head.
No.
This is worse. Later, Lorna showed me the library. It wasn't for reading. It was for display. But I still ran my fingers along the spines, trying to feel something human. Something normal. Something mine. I didn't cry. I didn't break. But I sat in that library for hours, thinking about Kevin. What he did. What he left me with. And how it was this man, Dino Aurellio, who came for me instead of the monsters Kevin was truly running from. And if that was the case, then maybe being claimed was the only thing that saved me. God help me. That might have been the scariest part. The first rule he forgot to tell me? Nothing in that house belonged to me. Not the walls, not the silence. Not even my own body. Especially not that. Dino Aurellio didn't touch me that night. But the next morning, everything changed. It started with the collar. Not leather. Not metal. Silk.
Black. Subtle.
Knotted around my throat like a delicate noose. I'm not a pet, I said when Lorna laid it on the bed. She just stared, then replied, You're his. I didn't scream. Didn't throw it. Just stood there, bare shoulders prickling, while the silence in that house wrapped around my throat tighter than the silk ever could. By the time I stepped into the marble foyer, the collar was on. So were the rules. He didn't look at me right away. Dino was pacing, slow, methodical, like a man who didn't trust the world to keep spinning unless he watched it. When his eyes finally cut to mine, they were cold and amused. Not your color, he murmured, nodding at the silk. Wasn't my choice, I replied. He stepped closer. I didn't back away. I could take it off, he said. My breath caught. But I won't, he finished. Because you need to remember what you are. And what's that? I asked, even though I didn't want to know. He leaned in. His breath brushed my cheek. His voice dipped. Collateral. The next 3 days were a test. I failed every one. I argued, snapped, refused to come when he called. He didn't punish me. He just watched, like he was waiting for me to learn the lesson on my own, that resistance was only a slower kind of surrender. And maybe I was. But not for the reasons he thought. Because somewhere in between the silences, I started seeing things he didn't mean to show. The tension in his shoulders when he walked past me. The way his gaze caught on my hands when I fidgeted. The fact that he never brought another woman home. This wasn't about sex. It wasn't even about money anymore. This was about possession.
Mine. We were in the study when I snapped.
It was late. Raining. He'd summoned me like I was staff, not even telling me why. What do you want, Dino? I asked, folding my arms. His eyes flicked to me from across the room. He was drinking something dark, leaning against the desk like a painting come to life. You're late, he said. I wasn't told there was a time limit. There's always a time limit, Hailey. You're on borrowed time already. I glared. If you want a dog, get one. I did. That cut. But I didn't flinch. I'm not going to heal, I said. He stepped toward me, slow, deliberate, like I'd asked him to chase me. I don't want you to heal, he said quietly. I want you to understand. Understand what? What would have happened, he said, if I hadn't come for you? Wait, before I keep going. If you're listening for the first time, welcome and buckle in. This is not a calm love story. Now, back to the moment I made the worst decision of my life. I stared at him. What do you mean? His voice was low. Kevin didn't just owe me money. He owed others. Less patient men. Dirtier ones. You're a mafia boss. Don't flatter me, he snapped. They would have sold you. Shipped you. Or worse. I felt sick. So, I should thank you for buying me first? No, he said. You should remember who made you vulnerable enough to need saving.
Kevin.
That bastard. I looked away, jaw tight. Why are you telling me this? Because, Dino said, stepping closer, you keep mistaking me for the villain. You're not. He leaned in until I could smell his cologne, dark spice, stormwater, and power. I'm worse. And I believed him. But I also knew something he didn't. That I could survive worse men. Even if it meant pretending to belong to one. Later, I found a letter slipped under my door. Not from him. From Lorna. 5 words, written in sharp ink. Do not try to run. Not don't think about it. Not don't be stupid. Just do not. Like she already knew. Like she'd seen girls like me, desperate, burning, full of fight, and watched what happened when they tried to escape him. I didn't rip it up. I folded it once and slid it under the mattress, where it could whisper to me in the dark. Because one day, I might try, but not yet. I wasn't supposed to like his voice, but I did. It haunted hallways, commanded rooms, tasted like warning and sounded like ruin. I heard it even when he wasn't speaking, echoing in the back of my mind, coloring every silence with threat. He didn't yell. He didn't need to. Power like his didn't raise its voice. It simply waited for the world to bend. And lately, I was bending. More than I wanted to admit. That morning, I was in the greenhouse. It was the only place in the estate that felt alive. Flowers bloomed in perfect obedience, red, white, deep purple, stretched toward glass ceilings like they didn't know who owned them. The heat made my skin dewy, my nerves too close to the surface. I was pruning a thorn rose when I slipped. The clipper nicked my finger, fast and sharp. Damn it, I hissed, clutching my hand as blood welled up. I didn't hear him enter. I never did. But suddenly he was there, plucking my hand from my chest like I belonged to him. Dino didn't speak. He just held my wrist in his gloved hand, inspecting the cut like it offended him personally. It's nothing, I muttered, trying to pull away. He didn't let go. Didn't even blink. He tugged a black silk handkerchief from his coat and wrapped it around my finger with a precision that made my breath catch. You're bleeding on my roses, he murmured. They're not yours, I said, still breathless. Everything here is mine.
I should have yanked my hand back.
Should have walked away. But I stood there like a fool, watching him tie that silk around my skin like a brand. His fingers were cold, but careful. He wasn't rough with me. Not this time. When he looked up, his eyes landed on my mouth, not my eyes. And for a second, just one, I swore he wanted to kiss me. Not to claim. Not to punish.
But to taste.
And that was worse. Because some reckless, aching part of me wanted it. Too. He didn't kiss me. He let go of my hand and left the room, silent as always. And I stood there bleeding, wrapped in silk, wondering when I stopped wanting to escape. I was at dinner that night when it hit me. He was unraveling me in pieces. Not with touch, not yet, but with control. With the way he knew when to show up, when to vanish, when to say nothing at all. Control is a drug when you have none of your own. And Dino Aurellio? He was a dealer. He let me sit at his table like I was something between a guest and a trophy. Didn't speak to me, but never ignored me either. I felt watched, not like prey, but like a storm cloud. Something he knew could erupt, but hadn't yet. And then, mid-meal, he asked, "Do you miss him?" I froze. The silverware slipped in my hand. "Kevin," I asked. "Do you miss him?" he repeated. I considered lying. But I remembered the rule. Silence over fiction. "No," I said. "Not even a little? I miss who I thought he was. Not the coward who ran." Dino's mouth curved, not quite a smile, but something close. "And me?" he asked, sipping his wine. "Do you hate me?" I looked straight at him. "I don't know you." He set the glass down. "You will." Later, I found Lorna in the corridor. She was adjusting fresh flowers on a hall table, lilies this time, stark and white. "Why does he keep me here?" I asked. She didn't turn. "Because he doesn't trust anyone he hasn't broken." I swallowed. "And what if I don't break?" She looked at me then. "You already are." That night, I curled in bed, wearing one of the silk slips he provided, a deep emerald thing that clung too close and smelled faintly of cedar. I lay there thinking about his hands, the way they wrapped mine, the way he stared like I was a question he hadn't decided how to answer. This wasn't love. It wasn't even obsession. It was something colder, older, a slow undoing, stitched together with silence and silk. And the scariest part? I was letting it happen. It started with an argument, not shouting, not slammed doors. Just two people standing too close, breathing the same air, pretending nothing electric was happening between them. "You don't get to decide everything for me," I said, hands clenched at my sides. Dino stood near the fireplace, jacket off, sleeves rolled to his forearms. He looked carved out of shadow and firelight, every line of him sharp and deliberate. "I already have," he replied calmly. That calm made me reckless. "You don't own me," I snapped. Silence. The kind that presses on your lungs. Then he moved. In 3 steps, he was in front of me, not touching.
Not yet.
Just close enough that I could smell him. Cedar, smoke, something dangerously clean. "I paid for you," he said quietly. "That makes you mine." Something in my chest cracked. "Then why does it feel like you're afraid to touch me?" I whispered. That did it. His hand came out of nowhere, gripping my wrist, pinning it to the wall beside my head. Not painful, firm, unavoidable. "You think this is fear?" he murmured, leaning in. "This is control." My pulse skidded. His body blocked mine completely now, heat and power boxing me in. My other hand flattened against his chest, solid, warm, terrifying. "You don't want me," I said, breath unsteady. "You want ownership." His gaze dropped to my mouth. "And you," he said, voice roughening for the first time, "keep pretending you don't want to be taken." The word taken landed like a spark. I should have slapped him. Instead, I lifted my chin. Prove it. For one long, suspended second, I thought he might pull away. He didn't. He kissed me like a man who'd been starving on purpose. Not frantic. Not gentle.
Claiming.
His mouth pressed to mine with slow certainty, like he was memorizing the shape of my defiance. My breath caught, not because I wanted to resist, but because my body had already decided to surrender. My hands curled into his shirt. He groaned, low, restrained, and deepened the kiss just enough to make my knees weaken. His free hand came to my waist, fingers splaying wide, anchoring me there. The world narrowed to heat and breath and the wall at my back. When he finally pulled away, our foreheads touched. "This changes nothing," he said, breath uneven. "It already did," I whispered. His jaw tightened. He lifted me then, not roughly, but effortlessly, carrying me down the hall like it was inevitable, like it had always been headed here. His bedroom was dark, lit only by city glow and low lamps. He set me down on the edge of the bed and stepped back, eyes roaming me like I was a loaded weapon. "Stop me," he said. I didn't. Instead, I reached for him, fingers sliding into his hair, pulling him down until our mouths crashed again. This time, there was no restraint. He kissed me deeper, harder, hands everywhere but nowhere explicit, waist back, shoulders grounding, overwhelming. When he pinned me gently onto the bed, his weight hovered just enough to remind me I still had air. He kissed my throat, my jaw, slow and deliberate, like he was marking territory with nothing but breath and intent. "Tell me if you want me to stop," he murmured against my skin. "I won't," I said. That was the fracture. The moment where the contract stopped being a shield and became an excuse. We moved together in quiet urgency, clothes abandoned piece by piece without spectacle. Every touch was charged, fingers lacing, foreheads pressed together, breath shared like a secret. When it tipped into something deeper, something consuming, he stayed close, eyes on my face, like he needed to see that I was choosing this. And when it was over, when the intensity finally loosened its grip, he didn't pull away. He stayed. One arm wrapped around me, firm and protective. His thumb brushed slow circles into my side, grounding me back into my body. I lay there stunned, heart still racing, listening to his breathing slowly even out. "You okay?" he asked quietly. The question startled me. Yes. He nodded once, as if he'd expected that answer. We didn't talk after that. Didn't define it. Didn't pretend it meant nothing either. I fell asleep against his chest, wrapped in the steady rise and fall of a man who claimed to hate weakness, and yet held me like I was something worth keeping whole. Morning came too fast. I woke alone. But this time, the emptiness felt different. Not abandoned. Guarded. And that scared me more than the kiss ever had. Because the first fracture wasn't in the contract. It was in him. And once something breaks, it never goes back to the way it was before. He didn't speak to me the next morning. Not a word. Not a glance. The bed was cold when I woke. The hallway colder. I told myself not to care. That it meant nothing. That it was part of the game. Control, silence, power. A kiss here. A fracture there. But still, some part of me, the soft, stupid part, kept listening for his footsteps. They didn't come. Lorna found me in the dining room. I hadn't touched the breakfast spread. She set down a fresh cup of tea beside me without comment. "Is he out?" I asked, trying to sound casual. Her eyes didn't meet mine. "He's in his office." Doing what, I wondered. Pretending last night never happened? I nodded, more to myself than her. "He warned you," Lorna said quietly. "You just didn't listen." "Warn me about what?" "He's not yours. Not in the way you want." "I don't want anything," I snapped. She gave me a look, gentle, pitying, cruel. "Of course you don't." I waited until afternoon to try. The corridor outside his office was lined with glass, thick, bulletproof, and unforgiving. I stood outside it for a full minute before I knocked once and opened the door without waiting. Dino didn't look up. He was seated behind a desk carved out of something darker than oak. Phone in hand. Voice low. Italian, fast and clipped. He said something I didn't understand, then ended the call and finally met my eyes. "I didn't say you could come in." I ignored that. "Are you avoiding me?" He raised an eyebrow. "Avoiding you?" "After last night." His mouth tightened. That was a lapse. A lapse. Like tripping on a stair. Like forgetting to turn off the stove. I swallowed hard. "You kissed me." "You kissed me back." "That wasn't a transaction," I said. "That was real." His voice dropped into something colder. "Don't mistake intimacy for safety." My stomach twisted. So it meant nothing.
He stood.
"I didn't say that." "Then what are you saying, Dino?" "That I'm not here to heal you." That hit harder than it should have. I turned to leave. But before I reached the door, he added, so quietly I almost missed it, "And you're not here to fix me either." Hey, before I tell you what he did next, are you still with me? Because this is where it stops being a story and starts being a trap. Now, let's get back to my downfall. I didn't cry.
Not then.
But something inside me folded. Because it was easier to believe he felt nothing than to accept what I was really becoming, another girl who mistook power for love. Later that day, I found a box outside my door. Inside, a new silk slip. Black this time. Thinner. Colder. And a note.
Dinner.
7. Wear this. I almost didn't go. But some bitter part of me needed to prove I wasn't broken. Not yet. The dining room was lit with low golden light. He stood at the head of the table, perfectly tailored suit and unreadable expression. He didn't apologize. Didn't explain. Just watched me take my seat like I was an object he'd ordered and finally unboxed. "You look obedient," he said. I almost laughed. "Don't get used to it." Something in his mouth twitched. Not quite a smile. I wouldn't want to. Dinner was silent, except for the scrape of silver and glass. He didn't look at me again until the end. "I meant what I said earlier," he murmured. "This isn't a rescue story." I met his eyes. "Then what is it?" His gaze softened, barely, like steel cooling just enough to warp. "This is survival, Hailey." Later that night, I stood by the window in my room, staring out at the cliffs and the sea. Somewhere beneath it all, my old life was still rotting. The girl who trusted Kevin. The girl who thought love was soft. The girl who didn't know what it meant to belong to a man who never gives up control. I thought I could play this game without falling.
But now?
I wasn't so sure, because survival might look like strength, but it also looks a lot like staying exactly where you swore you'd never be. I ran. Not far. Not smart. But just enough to feel the illusion of freedom before his world swallowed me whole again. It was the middle of the night. I slipped through the East Wing service door, barefoot and silent. The estate grounds stretched in all directions, beautiful and useless. Cameras blinked from the trees. I didn't care. I made it as far as the cliffside gate.
Locked.
Of course it was. I stood there panting, wind clawing at my slip, heart pounding so loud I could barely hear the ocean. For a second, I stared down at the waves and wondered. Then I heard him behind me.
Dino didn't shout.
Didn't run. His voice was quiet and sharp. Did you really think you'd make it off my property? I turned slowly. He was walking toward me, coat open, shirt unbuttoned at the throat. No guards. No threats. Just him, a storm dressed in black, looking like betrayal incarnate. I wasn't trying to escape. I lied. His eyes narrowed. Then what do you call this? Breathing, I snapped. Or, am I not allowed that either? The moment the words left my mouth, I regretted them. Not because I feared his anger, but because I saw the hurt flash behind his eyes before he masked it with something colder. He took 2 more steps. We were face to face now. Close enough to feel his heat. You think I'm suffocating you? He asked. You think I'm not suffocating? I fired back. I don't know who I am in this house, Dino. You keep me caged, then kiss me like I matter. I don't know what game you're playing. His mouth crashed into mine before I could finish. There was no warning. No pause. Just teeth and breath and fury and need. I gasped as his hands found my waist, pulling me against him like he'd reached the edge of restraint and decided to jump. I'm not playing, he growled between kisses. You think I wanted to want you? My hands fisted into his coat. I think you're lying to both of us, I whispered. He groaned low in his throat and kissed me harder, walking me backward until my spine hit the stone wall beside the gate. Cold against my back, fire against my front. His lips traced down my jaw, hot breath trailing behind. You make me crazy, he murmured. I can't think straight around you. Good, I whispered. I want you off balance. He laughed, sharp and breathless, then kissed me again. Slower this time, deeper, like he was memorizing my mouth. One hand tangled in my hair, the other slid down my spine, possessive but reverent. He didn't rush.
Didn't grab. He held me.
Pressed every part of me against him like he needed my heartbeat to calm his own. I kissed him back with everything I didn't say. Every moment I'd spent aching, waiting, wondering. When he finally pulled away, his forehead dropped to mine. I told myself I wouldn't do this again, he whispered. Why? Because the more I touch you, his hand pressed to my waist, the less I want to let you go. He didn't carry me back to the house. He held my hand, silently, like if he let go, I'd disappear. We went through the side entrance, past shadowed corridors and empty rooms, back to the place where the walls had once felt like a prison. But tonight, the prison felt like sanctuary. He didn't speak as we stepped into his bedroom, didn't bark commands or strip me bare. He just stood there, watching, waiting, until I reached for the buttons on his shirt. His breath caught.
But he let me.
And when my hands trembled, he covered them with his own. I'm not going to break you, he said softly. You already did, I whispered. His lips brushed my forehead, then my cheek, then finally my mouth. And then we fell, together, onto silk sheets and unsaid words and everything we weren't ready to admit. He kissed every part of me like he needed proof I was real, like he didn't trust himself not to ruin me. Clothes disappeared slowly,
carefully.
And when there was nothing between us, he still didn't rush. He hovered above me, eyes locked on mine, hand cradling my face. I want to remember this, he said. I nodded. Then don't look away. And he didn't. After, I lay curled against his chest, fingers tracing the edge of the scar near his ribs. He flinched. "You never told me how you got this," I said. He didn't answer, but his hand found my hair, slow and soothing. "Does it hurt?" I asked. "Only when I remember." "Do you want me to stop touching it?"
"No," he said.
"It hurts less when you do." That night, I didn't sleep alone. That night, he didn't wake me with silence. He pulled me closer when I turned, and when I whispered his name in my sleep, he whispered mine back. Like a promise. Like a curse. He wasn't in the bed when I woke, but the pillow beside me was still warm. I found him outside, barefoot on the stone terrace, black t-shirt clinging to him in the early morning chill.
Coffee in hand.
Eyes on the ocean. It should have felt peaceful. It didn't. Not with the storm in his posture. Not with the tension bleeding from his silence. "You didn't sleep," I said quietly.
His voice was low.
No, I moved to stand beside him. He didn't look at me, but he didn't move away either. "Something happened," I said. He nodded once.
"Tell me."
"You're not going to like it." I stepped closer. "Try me." He set his cup down slowly.
Turned.
And gave me the truth I didn't see coming. "Kevin didn't just steal from me," he said. "He tried to sell you." The words hit harder than I expected. Even knowing what kind of man Kevin was, some part of me had still hoped I was wrong about how deep his betrayal ran. But Dino didn't stop there. "He planned it months ago," he said. "Used you as bait to cover his real scheme. Took the money and arranged a trade. Not with me, with someone worse." "Worse," I whispered. He nodded. "Eastern Bloc. Trafficking cell." I intercepted the message. My stomach turned. "If I hadn't found you first," he didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. I stepped back, wrapped my arms around myself. The ocean wind cut through the silk of my robe, but I didn't feel it. All I felt was the tight, burning coil of realization. Kevin hadn't just left me behind. He sold me. To someone who wouldn't have negotiated, wouldn't have spared me, wouldn't have kissed me like I mattered. "You're shaking," Dino said, stepping forward. "Don't," I whispered. He paused. "Not because I'm angry at you," I said. "Because I don't know what hurts more, that he planned to trade me like a thing, or that you're the reason I'm not gone. That's not something to be ashamed of." I looked up at him.
"No."
"It's something to be terrified of." Before I tell you what happened next, this is your warning. After this, nothing stays innocent. Now, let's get back to the moment it broke. We didn't talk for the rest of the morning. He gave me space. I hated that I wanted him closer. By noon, I tore my room apart looking for something, anything, that belonged to the girl I used to be. There was nothing. Not even the book I brought had been opened. I curled on the edge of the bed, knees tucked to my chest, heart hollow. He found me there an hour later. He didn't knock.
He didn't speak.
He just sat beside me and held out a file. "What's this?" "Everything we have on the buyers," he said. "Names, locations, contacts. I wanted you to see it." "Why?" "So, you'll stop thinking I'm the worst thing that could have happened to you." I stared at the folder.
Didn't open it.
"I don't want revenge," I whispered. "I want to forget." "You won't," he said. "But I can make sure it never touches you again." I looked at him, then really looked, and saw something I hadn't dared name before. Not softness, not guilt, but rage. Protective, white-hot rage. Not for what Kevin did, but for what almost happened. "What are you going to do to him?" I asked. His jaw clenched. "What do you want me to do?" "I don't know." He reached over and gently touched my chin, turning my face to his. "Yes, you do," he murmured. "You just don't want to say it out loud." I didn't, because saying it would make me someone new. Someone darker. Someone more like him. But I didn't pull away either. That night, we didn't sleep in the same bed. Not because I didn't want to, but because I needed to remember who I was before him. Who I'd been before Kevin, before the debt, before the collar and the silk slips and the man who held my heart hostage without ever asking for it. I wasn't just a girl who was saved. I was a girl who was almost gone. And survival comes at a cost. Mine was starting to look a lot like love. I found him in the gym. shirtless. His back was to me, muscles carved in shadow as he punched into a heavy bag like it had betrayed him. Every strike landed with the precision of a man who knew what pain was and exactly where to put it. He didn't stop when I entered. Didn't speak. He just kept hitting that bag like it owed him something he'd never get back. "Is this how you forget?" I asked quietly. His rhythm faltered, just for a second. Then, slower, one last punch. He pulled off his gloves and turned. Sweat clung to his skin. His hair was damp, pushed back from his face. There was something unguarded about him like this. Less armor. More man. "It's how I remember," he said. I stepped closer, unsure if I was pushing my luck, unsure if I cared. He didn't move as I reached out, fingers brushing along his side, over the raised line of a scar I'd seen but never asked about. Until now. "How old were you when this happened?" I whispered. His jaw tightened. 17. I waited. When he spoke again, his voice had changed. Rougher. Not angry. Not cold. Just distant. First time I was sent to collect a debt alone. He was supposed to be harmless. A banker who'd borrowed too much from the wrong people. I knocked. He opened the door and stabbed me before I could speak. My breath caught. "You didn't fight back?" I did. But I hesitated first. He looked at me. That's the last time I hesitated. I ran my hand gently over the scar, trying to imagine him younger, bleeding alone. Trying to imagine anyone hurting him and surviving it. "Why tell me now?" I asked. "Because you don't flinch when I'm honest." We didn't speak for a while after that. Just sat in the low light of the gym, backs against the wall, legs stretched out. I handed him a towel. He didn't thank me, but he took it. And that felt like something. Later, in the library, I found a book he'd left open on the side table. Dostoevsky, The Brothers Karamazov. I smiled a little. Didn't expect that from a man like him. "You read this?" I asked when he walked in. He glanced at it. "You sound surprised." "I am." He moved to the shelf and poured a drink. "What kind of man do you think I am?" "The dangerous kind," I thought. "The kind who breaks hearts with his silence." But instead, I said, "The kind who doesn't believe in redemption arcs."
He smirked.
"I don't, but you still read them." "Sometimes," he said, sipping slowly, "it's nice to pretend." I stood and crossed the room, close enough to see the reflection of the fire in his eyes. "Would you want one?" I asked. "A redemption? A future?" He stared at me, unreadable. Then, "Not without you in it." I didn't know what to say to that. Didn't know how to hold something that fragile when everything around us had been built on threats and contracts and fear. So, I changed the subject. "Sort of. You never asked me about before." "Before Kevin?" I nodded. "I figured you'd tell me when you were ready." I sat on the arm of the chair beside him. There's not much to tell. I was quiet, careful. I thought playing by the rules would protect me. He looked up at me. "And did it?" "No." "Good," he said. I blinked. "Good. Rules are made by people with power. If you don't have any, they're cages." I laughed under my breath. That sounds like something a Mafia heir would say. That's because it is. We stayed like that for a long time. Not touching. Not kissing. Just sitting in a room full of old books and older ghosts, talking like maybe we hadn't been enemies once. Like maybe we weren't still pretending this was just about a debt. His hand brushed mine. Not by accident. And this time, I didn't pull away. Hours later, when I climbed into his bed, uninvited, he didn't stop me. He just pulled me against him like it was the most natural thing in the world. Like I'd always been there. And when his hand settled over the place where his scar lived, and mine rested just above it, we didn't speak. Because nothing needed fixing in that moment. Just remembering. And maybe, just maybe, forgiving. I knew at the moment I woke up. The quiet wasn't empty. It was settled. Dino lay on his back beside me, one arm bent behind his head, the other resting loosely over my waist like it had always belonged there. His breathing was slow, even. Unguarded. I watched him for a long time. The sharp line of his jaw. The scar near his ribs. Pale in the early light. The way his fingers curled slightly every time I shifted, like his body was tracking mine even in sleep. This wasn't possession. This was something else. And that terrified me. I slid out of bed without waking him and crossed to the window. The ocean was calm this morning, the horizon soft and deceptively peaceful.
A year.
That's what I'd agreed to. A contract.
A countdown. But the truth pressed heavy in my chest.
I didn't want to leave when the time came. I heard him move behind me. "You're thinking too loud," he said. I turned. He was sitting up now, hair mussed, eyes dark but alert, watching me like he always did, like he was bracing for impact. "I don't want to be a debt anymore," I said. His jaw tightened. "You're not. I don't want to be collateral. Or leverage. Or something you keep because it's easier than letting go." I walked back toward the bed, heart hammering. "I want to be here because I choose it." He stood. Slowly. Dangerously. "You don't make choices like this with men like me," he said quietly. "You survive us." I stepped into his space. I already did. His breath hitched. "You think I don't see it?" I continued. "The way you hold back. The way you keep one foot outside the door, like this is temporary." "This is temporary," he said sharply. "Everything is." "Not this," I whispered, placing my hand over his heart. "Not anymore." He grabbed my wrist, not hard but urgent. "You stay," he said, voice rough. "You don't get to regret it later." "I won't." "You don't know that." I met his gaze, unflinching. "I know this." Something in him snapped. Not violently. Not cruelly. Like a final restraint giving way. He kissed me, not like before. Not with hunger or tension or need, but with certainty. Slow. Deep. Anchoring. His hands framed my face, thumbs brushing my cheeks like he was grounding himself in the fact that I was real, that I wasn't running, that I wasn't asking for permission. I kissed him back with everything I'd been holding. When he lifted me, it wasn't desperate. It was intentional. He carried me back to the bed and laid me down gently, reverently, like I mattered in a way that had nothing to do with contracts or power. "This is you choosing me," he said quietly. "Yes." "And me choosing you," he replied. "Not the debt." The words settled into my bones. He undressed me slowly, not because he was savoring it, though his eyes burned, but because he was giving me time to stop him. I didn't. I reached for him, pulling him down, needing the weight of him, the truth of him, the heat. When we came together this time, there was no edge of danger. Just intensity, connection. The kind of closeness that steals your breath because it feels like standing too close to a fire you don't want to escape. He stayed close, forehead pressed to mine, murmuring my name like it meant something sacred, like it anchored him to the moment. When it crested, it wasn't wild. It was overwhelming. And when it passed, he didn't roll away. He stayed, wrapped around me, protective, solid. His hand traced slow, steady paths along my back, grounding me, keeping me present. "Hailey," he said softly. "Yes. You changed the rules." I smiled faintly against his chest. "You hate rules." "I hate losing control." And yet, he admitted, tightening his arm around me, "I don't want it back." We lay there for a long time, listening to the ocean beyond the walls. His thumb brushed my shoulder in absent circles, and every now and then, he kissed my hair. Aftercare. Not just physical. Emotional. Real. "I'm not asking you to give up your crown," I said quietly. "I wouldn't," he replied. "I know. And I'm not asking you to belong to me forever," he added. I lifted my head to look at him. "Good," I said. "Because I already do." His mouth curved, not a smirk. A real smile. Rare. Unguarded. Dangerous. The fall wasn't sudden. It was inevitable. And for the first time since this all began, I wasn't afraid of the ground waiting for me at the bottom. It started with a knock. Not from a guard. Not from Dino. From the past. Lorna cracked the door open just after dusk, face pale, voice lower than usual. "There's someone here," she said. "Who?" Her mouth tightened. "Your ex." For a second, I couldn't breathe.
Kevin.
Still alive. Still dragging hell behind him. I found Dino in his office, standing at the window with a glass of something dark in one hand.
He didn't look at me when I entered.
You knew, I said. He nodded. Why didn't you tell me? I didn't want to bring him into this house. Then why is he here? Dino finally turned. Because he thinks he has something I want. Kevin looked smaller than I remembered. Not physically, he still had that smug, entitled swagger, but it didn't reach his eyes now. Fear had hollowed him out. You look good, he said when he saw me. Better than I expected. I didn't respond. He shifted awkwardly, then turned to Dino. I've got information. Something you'll want. Dino sat back in his chair like a king on a throne.
Still.
Controlled. I could almost hear the noose tightening in his mind. And what, he asked, voice low, makes you think you're still breathing because I want something from you? Kevin flinched, then pulled a flash drive from his coat pocket. This has financials.
Names. Routes.
The people I was dealing with, the ones who were going to take her. I kept records. You could wipe out an entire network. Dino didn't move.
Didn't blink.
Why give this to me, he asked. Because if I don't, I'm dead. And I thought maybe, Kevin's eyes flicked to me. Maybe she'd convince you. You want my protection, Dino said flatly. Kevin nodded. And you think using her again will get it? Silence stretched so long, I thought I might scream. Then Dino stood, walked around the desk, and punched him.
Hard.
Kevin hit the floor with a sound that should have been satisfying. It wasn't. It just made me feel hollow. Dino knelt beside him, voice low and deadly. You don't speak to her. You don't look at her. You don't breathe in her direction again. He stood, looked at me. Leave, he said. It took me a second to realize he wasn't talking to me. Hold on, before I keep going. If you made it this far, you're in it with me. No exits. Now back to the final storm. We didn't talk again until hours later. I found Dino back on the terrace, glass untouched. He's gone, I said. I know. He gave you the drive. I won't use it. I frowned. Why? Because revenge isn't the same as protection. I stepped closer. You could end this. You could tear them down. I'd rather build something with you, he said quietly. Not on top of blood. That stunned me. You'd let them walk?
No.
But I'll choose when.
And how?
He turned toward me. Because you're not going to wake up to another war. The emotion caught me off guard. Not what he said, but how he said it.
Soft.
Firm.
Real.
I would have burned the world down for you, I whispered. You still could, he said, brushing his fingers against my cheek. Would you let me? No, he said. But I'd hand you the matches. Later, I stood in his closet doorway while he buttoned a black shirt. Clean lines. Perfect control. You're not angry that I let Kevin walk? I shook my head. I'm not here to decide who you punish. You're not, he asked, stepping closer. No, I said. I'm here to decide who I stand beside when the smoke clears. His eyes darkened. And then he did something he'd never done before. He kissed my palm.
Slow. Devout.
Like a vow he wasn't ready to say out loud yet. And I felt it.
Right down to the bone.
The storm wasn't over. But we were no longer on opposite sides of it. Now we were walking through it. Together. A year is a long time. Long enough to lose yourself. Long enough to become someone new. But what they don't tell you is that it's not the days that change you. It's the moments. And the moment that changed me most came on a quiet morning in April, when Dino placed the contract in front of me. 1 year, to the day. 12 months since he'd stepped into my apartment like a storm and told me I belonged to him. Now he was letting me go. It's void, he said, sliding the page across the marble table. Debt cleared. No strings. I didn't move.
Didn't speak.
He leaned back in his chair, watching me the way he always did, careful, unreadable, waiting for the part of me that still ran from good things to bolt. When I didn't, he tilted his head. You're free. My hand stayed in my lap. Quiet. Still. And then I smiled. You're an idiot, I said softly. He blinked. Excuse me? I stood, reached across the table, and tore the paper in half. Then in half again. I let the pieces fall between us like confetti made from something that never meant what we thought it did. I don't want free, I said. I want real. He stood slowly. And for the first time in months, Dino Aurellio looked unsteady. Not broken. Not lost. Just undone. For someone who hates being owned, he said, voice lower now, you're doing a hell of a job surrendering. I walked to him, pressed my hand against his chest. Not surrendering, I whispered. Choosing. His heart beat hard beneath my palm. And you? I asked. Are you choosing me? He didn't answer with words. He kissed me, like it was the only answer that ever mattered. We spent the morning outside, something we never used to do. He walked beside me through the rose garden, his hand on my back, mine in the crook of his arm. The sun felt warmer than it should have. The silence was companionable, not strained. I don't know how to be gentle, he said, almost to himself. I don't want gentle, I replied. I want you. He looked down at me. You really mean that? Yes. Even now, I still didn't say I love you. Not yet. Not because I didn't feel it, but because when I said those words, I wanted them to feel like fire. And we weren't done burning yet. Later that night, he brought me into the vault. I'd never been there before. It wasn't for show. It was where the real power lived, secrets, weapons, files, gold.
And a crown.
Not a literal one, but it might as well have been. A blood-signed agreement from a rival family. The last piece in a brutal game of control he'd been playing for years. He handed me the file. This is the end of it, he said. The last deal. After this, there's no more leverage left to hold against me. I flipped it open. It was everything. Every name. Every connection. Everything he'd used to rise. You're giving this to me? I asked, stunned. No, he said. I'm showing it to you. I looked up, and he added, because I trust you not to use it. I closed the folder slowly. This is your crown. He nodded. And I'm not asking you to take it off, I said. His eyes softened. I know. I won't wear it. I wouldn't let you. I smiled. But I'll help you polish it. That made him laugh. And then he pulled me into his arms. I've never wanted peace, he said quietly. Until you. I'm not peace, Dino. No, he said. You're something worse. I raised an eyebrow. Worse. He kissed my forehead. You're permanent. 2 weeks later, we left the estate together. No guards. No contracts. Just us. He took me to Florence, his city. His bloodline. The place where he stopped being a boy and became something people feared. We stood on a rooftop at sunset, watching the light bleed across the skyline, and for the first time, I saw him not as the man who had caged me, but the man who had waited for someone who wouldn't run. You look like you belong here, I said. He wrapped an arm around my waist. I don't, he replied. Not unless you're standing next to me. We didn't make speeches. We didn't make promises we didn't believe in. He didn't kneel. I didn't ask him to. But we both knew what this was. It wasn't about happily ever after. It was about surviving long enough to want one. It was about a girl who should have been sold and a man who was never meant to save anyone. And somehow, they saved each other anyway. People ask me if I ever regret it. Not the night he showed up. Not the contract I signed. Not the way I stopped running. They ask like I was brainwashed. Like he tricked me. Like I was just another broken girl pulled into a man's darkness and convinced it was love. But they weren't there. They didn't hear the way he said my name when no one was listening. They didn't see how he broke rules for me. How he protected me not with promises, but with power. With silence. With loyalty that didn't need explaining. They didn't see how I changed him. Not by fixing him, but by surviving him. By staying. By making him face the one thing he hated more than weakness. Wanting something he could never control. Me. I live in his house now. Not as a prisoner. Not as a possession. As a woman who walked into hell and made it home. His men call me Signora now. Not because I married him, Not because I took his name, but because even kings have to answer to someone when they fall in love. And he did. Hard. Quietly.
Permanently.
I still have the torn contract in a drawer. I keep it not as a reminder of what I owed, but of what I chose. 1 year. One mistake. One impossible man. And somehow, it gave me everything I never thought I deserved. I was supposed to be a debt. He was supposed to be my downfall. But somehow we became each other's only way out. Thank you for listening to my story. If you made it this far, you understand. Love doesn't ask for permission. It takes. And sometimes it saves. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification button so you don't miss the next dark story that's about to drop in 48 hours. Until next time, be careful who you trust.